Welcome to the Not Badger for the week ending October 30th, 2016. Yeah, I know it's late. Here, thanks to our privileged straight cis men who are trying to work off the guilt from their crimes of, that they're just people that they're not very nice, and that's why we put them in chains and shackles so they can do stuff for us. Don't worry about their background story. It doesn't matter. We have compiled a collection of funny, interesting, and hopefully useful clips from our most watched shows. Enjoy the spoils of their hard work. In Polecat Cast number 85, we talk about the news of the week, including the petition to shut down the red pill in Melbourne, Dilbert creator Scott Adams, WikiLeaks, and the value of Planned Parenthood.
I had a funny feeling a wave of shit was coming towards us Thursday last week when, as I was doing an inspection of the cinema and taking photos and getting it all ready so I could do a really nice section of trying to show how the event would be for the patrons, the manager asked an off-cut question, which was, "This film isn't about the red pill Reddit, is it?" And I was like, no, it's not. It's about men's rights and, they use the term red pill because it's a common vernacular. And then she said something that worried me, which was because our staff members have Googled it and are very concerned. By the time I got home, I had a demand that I needed to get a classification exemption from the government to show this film. This was not mentioned to me beforehand, and we've had 3 months of communication. So I go, all right, well, I'll do this the only way I know how. And I called up all the government regulation people and somehow convinced them to make a 28-day thing into a 24-hour thing. I gave them the exemption. And then I go, well, because now I'm worried, I need you guys to confirm it. I need you guys to send me an invoice, and I need to send me an actual confirmation that this is happening. And then 24 hours later, the petition started, and another 24 hours later, they go, sorry, but we have to cancel. Bye.
They were just looking for any excuse to cancel.
This has become the go-to. This has become the MO of feminists, is to try and tear people's tongues out so that nobody can hear them. It's just because, I've said this for fucking years. They don't want discussion. They want capitulation. They want subjugation. They don't want to have an actual discourse. This is great, though, because it will create the Streisand effect, and people will hear about it that otherwise would not have. So hopefully this turns out to be a plus for you guys in the long run.
It's also a smoking gun as far as I'm concerned, because you have feminists everywhere. So feminists don't hate men. We're just about equality. We just want to deal with areas where women are disadvantaged. And as soon as a film comes out that asks people to have compassion for men, asking people to have compassion for men is misogynistic. They're pitting women against men. They hate men. If you don't hate men, you're misogynistic. That's their zero-sum game there. So you have a smoking gun for that, and a smoking gun for the fact that feminists will say MRAs don't do anything. And you can go through and you can show all the different times where MRAs have done things, and several of those times we've done things that were to get laws passed and things like that, and feminists have opposed it. If we have talks, feminists oppose it. If we try to share information about our issues, feminists oppose it. And then all you do is blame feminists for your problems. Well, here's our smoking gun. This is proof. Feminists, they get in the way when we try to do something, and they do it on purpose.
Was Scott Adams shadow banned on Twitter and Periscope? On October 23rd, Dilbert creator and political blogger Scott Adams was on Periscope, a live streaming app that works through Twitter, to talk to his followers over coffee, presumably about politics and such. Scott experienced an odd phenomenon when he noticed the followers on his session dropped from over 1,000 when he started to 0 for no reason. Even though people were still interacting with him via the app, and considering the number of people he had watching, he could have been the #1 Periscope stream at that time, or at least near the top. Adams also said that his Twitter followers claimed they weren't getting Adams's tweets, which also suggests shadow banning on Twitter, something that Scott had never experienced before. Scott wrote on his blog about both incidents, stating that while there is no real proof that he is actually being shadow banned, and that he had tweeted to Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey in an attempt to get an explanation for this phenomenon, at this time Dorsey has not responded. But as Adams attempts to explain, he is a busy man. What I find most suspicious about this, and I'm sure Adams does as well, is the fact that his Periscope followers dropped from 1,000 to 0, specifically when Scott started talking about the fact that Trump could win the election in his opinion, and began to explain why. This could be a goof, things happen. But then Scott started another Periscope stream when the first one dropped to 0, and again when he got to Trump, the viewer count dropped to 0. Now that is suspicious. At this time, there is no more info, but we will be looking out for more if anything develops. By the way, in Scott's own blogs, he says that if he is being intentionally shadow banned on Periscope and Twitter, in his mind, this is an act of treason.
Controversial opinion time. For me personally, the emails that have been coming out from WikiLeaks these past couple of weeks are more stimulating than the entire motherlode discovered during the fappening. That's just me. But anyways, today I came upon another batch of emails which I will be adding to my collection. Apparently back when Bernie Sanders was on the campaign trail, Hillary Clinton's campaign team hired feminist writers to deliberately spin Mr. Sanders' words in order to make him sound misogynist. I'm not kidding. And guess what? Apparently one of these writers was Ms. I Bathe in Male Tears herself, Ms. Jessica Valenti. Now buckle in, kids, because the amount of spin you're about to see here will likely make your head do an Exorcist 180, just saying. So, back in January of this year, Sanders did an interview with Rachel Maddow, where he said the following, quote, "We're taking on not only Wall Street and the economic establishment, we're taking on the political establishment. So I have friends and supporters in the Human Rights Fund, in Planned Parenthood, but you know what? Hillary Clinton has been around there for a very, very long time, and some of these groups are part of the establishment. Now, nothing too inflammatory there, right? Well, guess what? Campaign organizers for Ms. Clinton decided to twist his words around into making it sound like Senator Sanders was saying that Planned Parenthood was part of the establishment that needs to be taken down. And 2 days after the email exchanges took place, Valenti delivered an article to The Guardian titled, "Bernie Sanders Must Deliver More Than Platitudes About Abortion." In it, she accuses him of being anti-women's rights on these grounds.
I gotta say this. I worked in nursing home care. I was a state-tested nurse's aide before I hurt my back. And of all of the nursing homes that you could go to, like the lowest common denominator, the bottom line of the most basic, cheap-ass care you can get is the county home that's run by the government. And Planned Parenthood is the county abortion clinic. They may be independent. They're independent the way the post office is independent, but they're government funded and they are the establishment. And frankly, everybody talks about what a great thing feminists say they are for women, but the quality of care that you're going to get there, I question that. Because they're the lowest common denominator. And if we're going into a society right now where our government is claiming to fund our health care regardless, our government is claiming that we have better health care now, the question then becomes, is Planned Parenthood really all that valuable?
Now on to Rant Circle number 71, where we attempt really hard to answer reasonable questions for anti-SJWs. I know, this is old, I told you.
Can I point something out, Christy? We would be in that camp, and we are currently in a horrendous war with people over this issue in the same camp that you have created. So there is some what is it called, Borgification that you are doing to us here, because not everybody agrees with you or agrees with that sentiment or agrees in the same way as us with that sentiment. This is Civil War time over that. And you can look outside America during the Civil War and say, wow, the North and the South, they're the same thing. They're the same country. But actually there is some significant disagreement going on. I don't know which side I'm supposed to answer for, because I'm actually completely baffled. Yes, I think you can separate Muslims or Arabs. You can separate the racial segment from the religion. I'm at a loss, so I just don't think that the people who are currently arguing that I'm an Islam apologist need to answer for my beliefs, nor do I need to answer for their beliefs. So the question is moot. There is no universal answer to it from social justice warriors or anti-social justice warriors.
When you say Muslim people, separate them from Islam, well, no, they are Muslim by definition because they follow the religion of Islam. If you want to separate Arabs out from the faith of Islam, yes, you can do that because there are atheist Arabs, there are Jewish Arabs, there are Christian Arabs. Yeah, you can do that, but you can't separate Muslims from the thing that by definition makes them Muslim. It's an impossibility.
Yeah, that's sort of where I was. That's why I said Arabs and not Muslims. I mean, it's sort of difficult to separate out the Islam from people who are Muslim because they believe in it, and they self-identify as believers in this faith. I mean, if you're going to say, like, I know Arabs who are ex-Muslims, you can separate out the Islam from someone who says, I'm an atheist, or someone who says, I'm agnostic, or someone who says, I've converted to Christianity. But it's sort of hard to separate the belief out from the believers.
Are people denying that, like, systemic racism is a thing? No, when it comes hypothetically. I don't think anyone would deny that racial, systemic racism could exist. I don't think anyone would be so stupid as to say that it is impossible for such a system to exist. We know that it can because it has happened before. What people are saying is that it's not happening now. And that's kind of a different thing. As I've mentioned this before, actually, on my channel, when you go from something which does have systemic racism to a case that doesn't, there will be disadvantage and problems that come from transitioning from one to the other. And the real debate at the moment seems to be from people saying that the disadvantage, the echo is still there, and other people saying it isn't. As in, obviously, if you've got a class of people of one ethnicity who are all slaves, but then in the next generation it's abolished and they're not, and they're allowed all these same opportunities that other people are, they will still have that disadvantage of the fact that their parents didn't learn to read and write and all that sort of stuff. So they come in at a lower point. And then the real thing comes with, how long does it take until that population is then level with the resident population in their access to everything? And that's kind of where the big contention seems to be. Social justice warriors say, no, we've still got the echo of that discrimination, and they're still being systemically disadvantaged because of that. Although some of them will say, no, systemic racism is still a thing, but some will say, no, they're still because of the history. And a lot of other people are just saying, no, that's over, because there are a shitload of very successful black people in America. So they're kind of proof that that's not a thing that's happening anymore. They have been able to reach, the upper echelons of entertainment, science, literature, and all of this sort of stuff.
People listening, you realize that most of the slaves in the Roman Empire, where did they come from? Well, some from Africa, but quite a bit from Europe. So most Europeans are the descendants, or quite a bit of the Europeans are the descendants of slaves. And the effect of being slaves in the Roman Empire, or being subject vassal nations or whatever, has been Western civilization. Just saying. Maybe, oh my God, I'm going to get shit for this. Maybe the people who win in society, or win throughout history, are the ones who learn to cooperate best. And maybe that kind of cooperation is facilitated when you get your hubris torn out at the root. Just putting it out there. And why is it? Because the slavery that our ancestors experienced, the serfdom that our ancestors experienced, is so far ago that we've learned whatever it was going to teach us about organization, about systems, about societies, and it was so far ago we no longer have to care about it.
I just want to say in brief that if you want to fix the problems in the Black community, you need to address men's issues in the Black community. That will address the problems. So that means giving families back their fathers, doing something about, the male delinquency is almost directly related to things like fatherlessness and child abuse in the Black community. So you're that means really looking at your community and not trying, going for this. Because one of the things about BLM people that they think is the solution, it's always this top-down approach of, we need to make changes in government. We need to make changes with the presidency, even though Barack Obama, by the way, has been president for the last 8 years, if you hadn't noticed, and it's actually gotten worse. That's not the answer. The answer is to take a good hard look at what is wrong, what is the cancer in the community itself, in the Black community. What are the problems with that, and address those. And then you will have higher standards of what kind of education you want, what kind of families you want, what kind of goals you should set, how to treat each other within the community itself, and so on. And those, I'm afraid, are men's issues primarily. That's my opinion anyway.
Okay, I did actually reference that. I asked them, if you take out all of the feminists who are saying, "Oh, why are you guys so racist?" If you take out all of the issues from the Black civil rights platform that are men's issues, what do you have left? Nothing, or near nothing.
If you think pointing the finger at someone and calling them racist has an effect on their behavior, and that you can use that to control them, what you're using against them is their guilt or their fear of being accused of being a racist to control their behavior. People who are really racist are not affected by that guilt, because in their mind, their feelings are the absolute truth, and they cannot be shaken by someone's accusation of racism. So you are literally going after people who are not racist, because the accusation of racism can only affect people who are not racist to get them to do what you want them to do. So you are just fucking with the definition of the word to the point where it doesn't mean anything, because it only means now whatever I think is racist. It doesn't actually apply to racist, because if you do it, if you use it on people that are not racists, then you will affect their behavior, because they're going to try to change it so that they're not being called racist anymore, because they're afraid of the stigma that comes with it. And the people who really are racist are not going to care. So yeah, Steve, what you're doing is pointless, because it doesn't, you are literally accusing people who are not racist of being racist so you can control them, which doesn't do anything for anybody except for you.
I don't consider it racist to discuss the issue of fatherlessness in Black communities. Seriously, taking a community's fathers away is a way of subjugating that community. So historically, elite populations have done this. They've reserved marriage for themselves, or they've encouraged this kind of a lack of father investment in order to create a population that's easy to subjugate. You want, the primary benefit that I had as a kid was having my dad to raise me. This is the primary benefit that Black kids do not have. And you couldn't give a shit about that. Because, to be honest, Christiosity, your anti-maleness as a feminist is more important to uphold than you advocating for the real problems that Black communities face, or solutions to the real problems that Black communities face. You'd rather sacrifice 100 million Black people to fatherlessness than question for a single second your absolute maximum that women deserve every choice, and that men should just accommodate them, and that men are not needed as fathers, or not needed that men, the fact that children need fathers should supersede a woman's right to remove fathers from their children's lives. I'm just saying, you have a priority here, and it is not helping Black communities.
Once again, he's making arguments against like the lowest form of argumentation coming from this side of the fence, which is, male feminists are just doing it because they want to get laid. Those are the weakest arguments on that side, on this side anyway. I mean, they're funny and, we get a laugh out of it, but I don't think that it's like, even if it's true, people don't really think that it's the best argument. So he's making an argument against the weakest arguments, which brings me back to, I bring it up because earlier in the same video, Christy Winters says, instead of going after the weakest feminist arguments, why don't you try going after the strongest feminist arguments? Well, Tim, I think that's this guy's name, right? Why don't you try going after the strongest anti-feminist or men's rights or rationalist, whatever arguments, instead of this whole, let me find the weakest ones and then try to essentially ask a rhetorical question about that and then say I win Checkmate anti-feminists.
What's really interesting is if you think about feminism and what it says, it essentially absolves female predators of responsibility, and it also absolves male predators of responsibility. Because male predators can say, it's not me, it's patriarchy. And female predators can say, well, they can say it's patriarchy too. So the fact that feminists attract predators, it sort of makes sense in the context of the lack. Like, it sort of makes sense because feminism is all about removing people's responsibility, their own personal responsibility for shit, and blaming it on amorphous forces like Satan. Calling someone a cock, calling someone a faggot, calling someone a mangina, pretty minimal, but calling them a patriarchal oppressor, an advocate for rape culture, a rape apologist. I mean, these slurs that you guys use against men, saying all men have toxic masculinity and responsible for everything bad in the world. I think that we're dealing with orders of magnitude. Maybe it is that our community can handle a little bit of criticism about men, but we draw the line at the idea that men have this sort of man Quran under their pillow, and you open it up and it says hate women and oppress them, and they all believe in this ideology.
The Broan.
They're the Broan. They all have this secret ideology that all men have that hates women, that to practice the hatred of women. Maybe we could stop those kinds of slurs on men. And it's okay to have the lower level locker room jeering kind of slurs towards men. So instead of worrying about slut, we'll worry about saying that women are responsible for everything evil in the world, which I think was addressed when Mary became the mother of Jesus, and everyone decided that absolved Eve and Adam. Well, no, just Eve, not Adam, but Eve of sin, all the sins in the world. Yeah, let's focus on that instead of slut. Let's focus on all men are responsible for hating women and oppressing them, rather than cuck.
I don't know what Mr. Moriarty is arguing here either, because most of the people on the feminist side of the fence have far more subscribers and followers and retweets and all that shit coming out than we do. Even though our views come from a lot of data and citations and facts and things that we're drawing from, logic and reason and evidence, they're still not popular opinions because people have a really hard time dealing with them. Cassie J, who made the red pill, it took her 2 years to come to the conclusion that she didn't, well, I don't want to say anything else. It took her 2 years to come to the ultimate conclusion that she did by the end of the documentary. It was a very difficult process for her. And that's just one person. But the popularity of her film, which I think it's going to be very difficult for that film to become popular, because there's going to be an initial knee-jerk reaction to resist the information that's in it. That does not reflect on whether or not she has good ideas, which is what you're arguing, Moriarty. You're saying that just because an opinion has a lot of popularity doesn't necessarily mean that it's true. Well, that's exactly what we're arguing.
Yeah.
That's the position we're coming from.
Feminists and social justice warriors constantly use that. They constantly talk to people on the anti-feminist, anti-social justice side and say, you've got so many more subscribers than me. Whenever you make a response to a video, we get dogpiled and chased off the internet. So they're the ones who bring that shit up so much more. Which then brings up, I suppose, the point, why is it that like the anti-feminist, anti-social justice side is getting more traction on YouTube than the feminist side? Well, it's because the feminist social justice side is in academia, it's in the law, it's actually out there in the real world. The internet is kind of the sort of last haven, as it were, for the anti-social justice, anti-feminist side of things. and it's gaining a lot of traction. I mean, it's rapidly becoming kind of the flavor of the month on the YouTubes. I mean, there's channels popping up every few days starting doing it. I don't think a single month goes by where I don't get at least 2 or 3 people messaging me saying, hey, I'm starting a channel doing the same thing that you're doing. You know, you can click on so many of them, go watch their oldest videos. So many of them are less than 12 months old. You know, it's because it's sort of a growing thing, because this is the last place where you can still talk about it. So that might tell you something, that this is like the only place where people feel they can still talk about this sort of shit. And that's why they all gravitate here. It's an unfortunate thing that when you've got that many people sort of on the internet, yes, some of them do spill out and then attack the feminist side. Yeah, that's a very unfortunate thing that does happen, but content creators have no control over that. And the feminists and social justice warriors need to stop using the number disparity as a justification for crying harassment.
Maybe you need to grow a backbone. Maybe you need to learn what internet discourse looks like. Also, it might be useful for you to call out shit on your own side. You're the people who get people fired, and they form bullying campaigns. Have you ever heard of the Crash Override? Yeah, Crash Override Network. You might want to look at that and see if you know.
That meets your definition of bullying. I just want to say, okay, this is feminist now. These are probably self-identified feminists, and I apologize to any of these individuals who doesn't identify as a feminist. You realize that there are feminist campaigns to go into schools and teach 9-year-old boys, little kids, to take responsibility for violence against women. That's fucking bullying. You guys are part of a movement that has created bullying campaigns like that. And not just against little kids, little boys, but also against men in general. Bullying campaigns that resemble the shit that was pumped out against Jewish people in prior to World War II, or black people in Jim Crow South, or at enemy combatants in any government. You create these bullying campaigns that millions of dollars, billions of dollars, publicly everywhere. You bully men about manspreading, mansplaining, man breathing, man slamming. You bully men constantly, and it doesn't cease to become bullying because it's printed on glossy paper or in a magazine, or it's a so-called PSA. It doesn't cease to become bullying because an advertising firm created it. It actually becomes institutional bullying. You answer for that.
I think this comes down to collectivism versus individualism too in this discussion. The regressives think that because they have people who listen to them, people who watch them, and they also have the moral high ground, the ability to discern what is objectively right or moral versus what is objectively immoral, they also have the ability and the right and the privilege of telling other people what those things are. They get to they get to identify a problem, and they also get to identify the solution to that problem, and that all comes through them. And they are the head of some kind of gigantic gestalt mecca, and everyone else who is their listeners and viewers and other content creators are all part of it. The arms, the body, the legs, and they're the head. And they think that because they're in that position, they can command all their other body parts to do as they want. And that is a collectivist thinking where they say, well, why don't you tell your people to do X? Individualists know that what they do is what they want to do. So if we want to make content and we want to address a problem that we see, we say, look, here's something that I think is a problem that we should look at. Or here are people who have really bad ideas, and I'm going to tell you why they're bad ideas. And then they hopefully attract people. They don't really go seek, necessarily expect what that number is going to be, but they hopefully attract people who will be willing to listen to their videos, not necessarily agree, but at least entertain them. And then some people will and some people won't. And at the end of the day, individualists don't expect that those people are going to do whatever they say, because they're individuals and they're also not responsible for those people. It's a different way of thinking. that I think is more frequently seen on this side of this discussion, where it's like, well, I'm not responsible for what my listeners do. I don't care what they do. You know, they're people too. They're individuals. They get to make these decisions. I don't have the kind of ego that says that whatever I say or whatever I do has massive amounts of influence over people who watch us. You know, it's crazy. It's like they think they're fucking Car Voltron or something. And we're just people talking. I think that's where it comes from. And if it's not that, it's one other thing. It's that they don't even expect that we would be able to influence people by making the statement that you should stop bullying or you shouldn't go to that channel and harass those people or whatever. It's that they want us to want to be seen telling them not to do that, which is some crazy weird form of virtue signaling. And virtue signaling is fucking disgusting.
They're making their own points as well. Can you not answer them? Do you not want to answer these individuals' own points against you? No, you don't. You want to hide from everything.
Well, because it's all bullying. Everything that doesn't allow them to control everyone else is bullying. All right.
Anything that doesn't cater to them having the world exactly as they want it is wrong and needs to go.
Yeah, but the problem is that when the world is exactly what they want it to be, they no longer get to feel the pleasure of forcing other people to conform to the world the way they want it to be. Therefore, it can never be the way they want it to be. These people are afraid of each other. I guarantee the individuals in this video are terrified of each other. But for whatever reason, they still call each other friends. I don't. That's not the kind of friend I'd ever consider. Like, I'm not scared of Mike. I'm not scared of Brian. I'm not scared of that I'm going to say the wrong thing and Mike and Brian are going to be like, "Oh my God, Allison, out of the cave. You don't belong here anymore." I'm not scared of that with Karen. I'm not scared of that with Ray. Sorry. I'm not scared of that with Anna. I'm not scared of that with Hannah. I'm not scared of that with Bunny. I don't have any fear of that I'm going to say the wrong thing and then they're going to all descend and eject me from the group. I might say something stupid and then they might come and be like, "Oh, well, why'd you say this stupid thing?" And we might discuss it. But I'm not going to be ejected. All of these people, all of the social justice warriors are terrified of each other. They're terrified of saying the wrong thing. They live in constant terror of each other. And it's just amazing to me that they don't realize that that's not a way to live. You shouldn't live in fear of your friends. You shouldn't live in fear of the people who say that they're your comrades or whatever you want to call them, they're your colleagues. This is not a life. It's not a life for a human being. I am seeing a new shitty methodology being developed by feminist research in domestic violence. You know what they did? They created a series of questionnaires to find out which questionnaire inflated women's responses to the question, "Were you hit?" and reduced men's responses to the question, "Were you hit?" The methodology of this research paper, or the aims of this research paper, were specifically to get rid of false positives, because they felt that there were lots and lots of false positives and men saying that they were being hit because their current instruments were finding equal rates. They wanted to get rid of those equal rates because they don't like them. They're not ideologically convenient. So they developed a series of questions. One set of questions found exactly equal. There's a conflict statistics table. You ask men, in the last 12 months, have you been hit by your partner? Equal numbers of men and women say yes to that question, but that's not good enough. So they created another question. In the last 12 months, have you been hit by your partner in anger? Guess what happened with that set of questions? Twice as many men as women said yes. That set of questions, did your partner hit you in anger, found twice as many men saying yes in the last 12 months. That wasn't good enough. In fact, that freaked them the fuck out. So they developed another set of questions. Did your partner hit you on purpose in the last 12 months. In each of these set of questions, the almost identical numbers of men said yes. So identical numbers of men said yes to, were you hit in the 12 months by your partner? And were you hit in anger in the last 12 months by your partner? And did your partner hit you on purpose? But the on purpose question got twice as many women saying yes. So in a study that was designed to reduce false positives for women saying yes to were you hit in the last 12, or people saying yes to were you hit in the last 12 months, they located a survey that actually increased the number of positives. So they didn't actually find what said they were looking for, at least what they said they were looking for scientifically, a way to reduce false positives, because they ended up with something that increased the positives, at least with women. Although I don't understand how it did. How it increased the positives. How does changing the wording to on purpose increase the number of positives with women? But anyway, regardless, what they're doing now is they have located what they wanted. And what they want is a new survey instrument to increase the number of women who say yes to were you hit in the last month or last 12 months relative to men. So now they're going forward with that survey instrument, even though they specifically stated they wanted to reduce false positives, which they didn't do, they increased them. And they have another survey incident where you hit in the last 12 months in anger that doubled the rate of male victims versus female victims. They ignored those two. They ignored the study that found equal rates. They ignored the study that found twice as much rates of male victimhood to focus on the study that found half the rate of male victimhood relative to female. And that's the study that they're now going to use to investigate domestic violence. And this individual is complaining about somebody using their Google foo on fucking the internet to refute a point. You realize how anti-science your entire belief system is. You are willing to ignore the entire process of science to get the results that you want. There's no explanation why the methodology that finds equality or equal rates of domestic violence victimization in men and women is wrong. There's no explanation why the methodology that finds that men are twice as likely to say, yes, my partner hit me in anger in the last 12 months relative to women is wrong. There is no explanation why the methodology that for no apparent reason increases the rate of positives for women to twice that of men is the correct methodology, but you use it because it's the correct methodology in your fucking ideology. That's science? You have some nerve. And the problem with that is somebody using their Google foo to refute an argument on the internet is nowhere near the capacity of harm as feminists using this kind of shitty logic to push statistics that inform government policy. Because what they're doing with this new methodology that overcounts female victimization is they're going to use it to reaffirm the Duluth model and reaffirm the primary aggressor model in political or the police response to domestic violence, which in turn is going to reinforce the fact that a man who is fucking bleeding from a goddamn stab wound and his wife has the goddamn bloody knife in his hand, if he calls the cops, he is more likely to be arrested than her. So your fucking philosophy or your ideology is resulting in people dying or being hurt or being underserved by government programs, being discriminated against by the government. And you are fucking complaining about somebody's Google foo on the internet. Thank you. Perspective, please.
I don't know what this definition of being grown up is. I don't know what it is.
Agree.
I guess it's agreeing with them.
Yes.
Oh,
Agreeing with them is being a grown up. Otherwise, you're a child and you're stupid.
So basically, you must accept these truths.
Yes.
Period. And there are no.
I think I know what it is. It's because they're being told that not being able to engage with concepts that they don't like is a sign of immaturity. Well, it is. And you guys, not only can you not engage with concepts you don't like, you live in perpetual fear of each other. It's because the moment that you actually think about something rationally and don't just confirm with the rest of the group what you're supposed to believe, you are going to be thrown under the bus by your friends. Well, you know what? I could say grow up. I could say, I could point to all of the shit that you guys do, the bullying that is actually, you get entrenched in government policy. I could point at the censorship you guys promote. Why don't I just point at one thing and speak to everyone? One reasonable question for the social justice warriors in this video. But don't you ever want to not be afraid? Do you ever wake up at night and say, wow, I wish I lived in a community where I can express myself and not be terrified that someone is going to come around and try to throw me out of it and try to wreck my reputation and try to get me fired. I'd love to live in a community where we can talk rationally about anything and not have to confirm with the general consensus what is the acceptable approach. And if we don't conform with the if we don't get into that increasingly smaller and smaller circle of moral correctness, we can be subject to all sorts of punishment. That's my question to you. Do you ever look at your life and say, I'm terrified of the people I spend most of my time with? Maybe this isn't a life that any human being should live. Do you ever do that?
Finally, we have Cherry Stem number 13, where we talk about disabled sex and the female orgasm. Yes, this is totally useful info. I'm sure that you guys can get a lot out of it.
We'll talk about specifically disabled sex, and let's start with your origin stories, ladies. So let's just throw it to Shannon first and see how did you end up here in your wheelchair, I guess.
Well, I was diagnosed with Charcot-Marie-Tooth, which is a neuromuscular disease, when I was 4 years old. It slowly progressed my entire life, but it didn't get to the point where I was solely in a wheelchair until about the age of 18, 19 years old. So I could kind of still bounce off the walls and pinball around, walking and stuff if I was holding on to things. So now, because my disease has progressed to the point where my legs just aren't cooperating anymore and I can't support myself, I'm in a chair 24/7 now. So that's kind of how I got here.
All right. Thank you for sharing. And how about you, Leah? What is your origin story?
Well, I like to say that I never wanted my feet to touch the floor ever again, but that's not really what happened. I had a nasty accident. I was at a gathering, and as some gatherings go down when you're young, boys, they like to play fight, don't they? And I was curled up in the window, texting, the window was open, one boy pushed the other, landed against me, and out I popped out the window. And when I was outside of the window, I remember seeing it, and it was so surreal. I thought it was like a dream. So I thought, I must be dreaming. If I shut my eyes, I'll wake up, which was a bad idea, because then I woke up getting strapped into an ambulance. They gave me a 10% chance of any recovery at all. It was a grade 4 something. I can't remember the terminology, but it's the worst kind. My spinal cord is still intact, but I haven't had any movement or sensation returned. So in a way, to excuse the pun, I kind of know where I stand with it. This is the cards I've been dealt with, and I know that nothing, so I can work with that rather than hoping for something that may or may not come. In one way or another, you are always paying for it. Even, husband and wife situation. The husband's paying all the bills, and, she's doing the housework and homework and whatever it is that people do. It's a mutually beneficial relationship, and different feelings are involved, of course, but you are always paying for it in some way.
Exactly. It is a mutually beneficial situation, as you said. And to me, it cuts out a lot of unnecessary issues when you have a more direct transaction. And that's why I would encourage a lot of people to seek the help of sex workers when, as you saw, we had questions coming in for this broadcast. And some of the questions were, I am a disabled man, and how do I have sex with a woman, disabled or otherwise? And the question is, well, are you okay with paying for it? And a lot of guys say, no, I'm not okay with that. But they do not realize that they are always paying for it. And there's a big, big stigma around men paying for sex exclusively. And somehow we ignore the fact that there are women on the other end of that transaction, women who enjoy being paid for their sexual activity. In fact, I work as basically a cam girl. I do web shows, and it gives me sexual pleasure at the thought of men spending money on me. It is a turn on. So I think you kind of come from the same place.
There is a lot of stigma around sex workers as well, because I've had some horrific derogatory names made against me when really I only perform these acts in exchange for money. I don't have sex without a condom. I don't have sex with random strangers. I wouldn't have sex with 3 or 4 people in a week, even a month. And then you'll have people, the same people who are calling me these names, they're the ones who are having sex with everybody in the block without condoms, and you just want to take them all to the clinic.
It is often projection. I'm frequently seeing that when you get something levied against you, an insult from, frequently women seem to be more culpable in this. When you get an insult thrown at you and then you look back at what they're doing and they're doing the exact same thing, and they're just suspecting you of doing what they're already feeling guilty for doing.
A lot of the time I have my cleavage on display because I like my tits. And, people are like, oh, you just have those off so people can fap to them. And I'm like, wouldn't they go look at porn to do that? Why would they be on YouTube?
They accuse me of wearing low-cut tops when the thing is, they lower cut, they look like that honest because we have a larger breast. Because I'm in a wheelchair, so the men wouldn't notice that I'm in a wheelchair.
Right,
and I'm
we're always lower.
I really don't think the cleavage is distracting at all from the wheelchair. And it doesn't matter what top I wear, it's always going to look a little bit more slutty. Well, as maybe a more derogatory word, it's not really slutty, but, a lady with a smaller chest could get away with a vest. Whereas if I wear a vest, there's boobs everywhere.
Very true. But, I have as a lady with smaller breasts, I have a secret. You don't wear a bra and then your nipples poke through, and it's the same thing as a cleavage. It's quite grand.
I know. I like nipples. They're good.
But yeah, I that's interesting that we kind of are talking about this thing where you have people who, because you are open and upfront and very clear to everyone that you basically own your sexuality in a very direct way of not giving a fuck and just doing what you want to do. And then that is what's labeled as, a whore or whatever, while the other people, the other girls, are kind of hiding it and not really showing people what they're doing, but they're doing a lot more promiscuous stuff. And yet somehow, because of this openness, we're the ones labeled bad things, while the ones that hide it are somehow seen as innocent and pure. And, it's purity is such a lie in the first place. The biggest issue where I see a lot of tension and why there's a group of women who, call themselves feminists, who push away from women like us and push away from men, is because they have this desire to control the situation and get like a social power of sorts, while we just want to hang out. Yeah, we just want to hang out with the guys. And guys like us more because of that, because we're chill. We just want to hang. And so that is a big, big source of contention.
Yeah. Until they try it on, and then they can go.
Exactly.
So it seems like all of you kind of have you're part of that group where you've got the girls who are nice to guys seem to always kind of be kicked out of the girl group. Is that what you guys typically seem to find? And what percentage of girls do you find that are kind of part of this smaller group that gets kicked out?
Yeah, people do isolate me, and I don't give a shit because I'm lush.
It seems like all the females that are allies to men always are getting kicked out of the girl group. I mean, that seems really like, I could understand if you got this group of people who get kicked out for whatever reason, and then you've got a group of people who are allies to guys, and the borders cross. But it seems like both of these borders are exactly the same, where if you're an ally to guys, you get kicked out of the girl group.
If you don't have any male friends, that worries me if you're a girl. You know, you obviously only see men as something you can have sex with. Same as with men who don't have female friends. They only see women as someone they can have sex with. And I think maybe there should be a bit more integration.
One of the things that is asked is, well, how is it that you enjoy intercourse, especially penetrative intercourse, if you can't feel anything below the belt? So what is kind of your, what do you get out of it, so to speak?
Well, I've never really, to be honest, I've never really been into sex per se, because sex to me has always just been just sex. I've always been a more mentally stimulated woman. You can't just wham bam, thank you, ma'am, me. It's not going to excite me. There's got to be some element in there, you know, like I can't, like, it's been about 8 years now, so I can't get on top of a man anymore and put on a show. But then, like, the feel of a man on top of me, knowing that a man's turned on, talking dirty, you know, the whole, you look good underneath. The whole, like, it's like almost like a show, isn't it? In your private life or in work. You know, a bit of dirty talk, gas mask, knife. A bit of pulling, innit? You know, it's not about the sensation. It's more about the mental connection.
So it's kind of like the drama, and you know, you can't. We go for VR and all of that. You know, we keep trying to get a more and more realistic experience, and I think that basically what you're talking about is that you get a very real and up close, dramatic experience which you are a part of, and then that of course, when it is sexual in nature, is going to be a sexual turn on.
Yeah, it is, because, you know, sometimes I'll get a regular Joe, you know, like a general regular person, and they're like, oh yeah, I'd shag you, and I'm like, come on then, I'm on the sofa, just shag me now then. And they're like, they get scared and run away. And then you'll get a client, they'll actually pay me, and I'll say, you know, speak to me in German, spit in my face, call me a whore, and they will. And I'm like, yes.
So a question would be, do you notice a difference? In other words, is there a difference in your level of turn on from some of those activities, but also in whenever you're also penetrated? Does that make a difference to you? Because apparently there's like the vagus nerve that bypasses the spine. And so sometimes people can...
I've never experienced it though. Although sometimes I lucid dream. So, you know, I know I'm dreaming. So if I know I'm dreaming, I'll seek sex out, because it's the only time where I can actually feel sex. But other than that, when I'm awake, I've never come through sex anyway, because I've always been more of a clitoral stimulated girl.
The seminal fluid, which makes about 70% of semen composition, has enormous physiological impacts on the female brain and body. It actually has the ability to activate genes, trigger changes in the uterus, reduce levels of depression in women, make them sleepy after sex, strengthen the emotional bond with the partner, and more. And all of that is through semen. So that's why I don't trust girls who don't swallow. Right there.
I always used to be tired after I had a good wank.
Yeah, and the thing too is what Richard was mentioning earlier is there is, I will be linking this in low bar, but if we're talking about paralyzed activity, sexual activity, paralyzed sexual activity is almost like paranormal. You have the vagus nerve that can be stimulated in order to affect the brain chemistry in the same way that penetration would. So for women who are paralyzed, have spinal cord injury, who cannot feel anything down there, there is a way to stimulate the vagus nerve and actually get a mental sort of reaction that they would have. That they would have while having sex.
We hope you enjoyed this clip show. If there was a clip from these shows you think we should have shown, please leave a comment on the video and include a timestamp. Thank you, and Badger on.